The 30th of January, 1933. Adolf Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, bringing an end to German democracy. Guided by racist and authoritarian ideas, the Nazis abolish basic freedoms and seek to create a community which would unite all social classes and regions of Germany behind one Führer. However, not many people know that before election, the Führer was taught crowd control techniques, using gestures and dramatic pauses by a charlatan and clairvoyant performer with Jewish origins, to whom important Nazi officials owe substantial sums of money. His name is Erik Jan Hanussen. Erik Jan Hanussen was born as Herschel Chaim Steinschneider on the 2nd of June, 1889, in Vienna, then part of Austria-Hungary. His father Siegfried was a caretaker of a synagogue and a performer who traveled through Austria and Italy with his family until his wife, Austrian singer Julia Kohn, died when their son was only 10 years old. When Herschel was 13 years old, he left school, ran away from home, and found a living in a variety show and circus environment, increasingly dealing with the topic of magic, hypnosis, telepathy, and occultism. The First World War began on the 28th of July, 1914. Steinschneider enrolled in the army, and during this time he used mentalism to entertain the other troops. In 1917, he adopted the identity of an aristocratic Scandinavian clairvoyant, Erik Jan Hanussen. After the First World War ended on the 11th of November, 1918, Hanussen rose to fame as he traveled through Central Europe and America, performing as a clairvoyant, and in 1930, he settled in Berlin. There, Hanussen performed a mind-reading and hypnosis act at La Scala Theatre that catapulted him to stardom. He then headlined numerous variety palaces and had a number of side ventures, like a sanitarium offering occult cures and a libido-enhancing hormonal cream. Although he had been born poor and had at times been homeless and penniless, he was now a wealthy man with luxury cars, multiple apartments, and even a yacht on which he threw lavish, drug-fueled parties. At his height, Hanussen offered private consultations for exorbitant fees and enjoyed the company of Germany's military and business elite, also becoming close with members of the Nazi paramilitary force, called the SA, also known as the Stormtroopers or the brown shirts for the color of their uniform. It is claimed that he was a supporter of the Nazis despite his Jewish ancestry, which was an open secret. Through his connections and performances, Hanussen befriended a number of Nazi officials, many of whom attended parties on his yacht. In particular, he became close with a Nazi official, Wolf-Heinrich Graf von Helldorff, to whom Hanussen constantly lent money for his debts. Such was also the case of Karl Ernst, once a hotel bellboy and a bouncer at a gay nightclub, and Friedrich Wilhelm Ost, both of whom would later assist during Hanussen's arrest. In 1931, Hanussen purchased a Breslau printing firm and began printing an occult journal named Hanussen Magazine and Bunte Wochenschau, a popular bi-weekly Berlin tabloid which included astrological columns. He used the proceeds from his publishing ventures and staged shows to purchase a mansion which became known as the Palace of the Occult, which he renovated and turned into a luxurious interactive theater for fortune-telling games. Guests would sit around a large circular table and place their palms on a glass, with symbols lit from beneath. The room lights would be lowered in a séance-like fashion, and various gimmicks would highlight Hanussen's dramatic verbal presentation of prophecies to his guests. He became successful, predicted events in the lives of the individuals present, and was always in demand in various venues. He even had a full-time valet. After Hanussen's first meeting with Hitler in June or July 1932, his predictions and horoscopes of Nazi officials, published in his Bunte Wochenschau tabloid, became more positive. According to Hanussen's vision, only with Hitler would Germany ever make a comeback, and he encouraged people to vote for Hitler as a savior of Germany. He taught Hitler his crowd control techniques of using gestures and dramatic pauses, thus instructing the future Führer in performance and the achievement of dramatic effect. Hitler was a good student. The July 1932 elections brought the Nazi Party 37.3% of the popular vote, making it the largest political party in Germany. In the ensuing elections in November 1932, the Nazis lost ground, winning 33.1% of the vote. The Communists, however, gained votes, winning 16.9%. As a result, by the end of 1932, the small circle around President Hindenburg came to believe that the Nazi Party was Germany's only hope to forestall political chaos, ending in a communist takeover. Nazi negotiators and propagandists did much to enhance this impression. On the 30th of January 1933, President Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler Chancellor of Germany. However, Hanussen's most famous prediction was to come. On the 26th of February 1933, when he held a séance in his palace of the Occult, he foresaw the Reichstag fire, a decisive event that would allow Hitler and the Nazi Party to seize absolute power over Germany. On the following day, the German parliament, the Reichstag building, burned down due to arson. The Nazi leadership and its German nationalist coalition partners exploited the fire to persuade President Paul von Hindenburg that communists were planning a violent uprising to derail Germany's national renewal, and that emergency legislation was needed to prevent this. Commonly known as the Reichstag Fire Decree, the resulting Act for the Protection of the People and State abolished a number of constitutional protections and paved the way for Nazi dictatorship. Using emergency constitutional powers, Adolf Hitler's cabinet had issued a decree for the protection of the German people on the 4th of February 1933. The decree placed constraints on the press and authorized the police to ban political meetings and marches, effectively hindering electoral campaigning. A temporary measure, it was followed by a more dramatic and permanent suspension of civil rights following the 27th of February burning of the Parliament building. Though the origins of the fire are still unclear, in a propaganda maneuver, the coalition government, the Nazis and the German Nationalist People's Party blamed the communists. They exploited the Reichstag fire to secure President von Hindenburg's approval for an emergency decree, the Decree for the Protection of People and State of the 28th of February, one day after the burning of the Reichstag. Popularly known as the Reichstag Fire Decree, the regulation suspended the right to assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and other constitutional protections, including all restraints on police investigations. Justified on the false premise that the communists were planning an uprising to overthrow the state, the Reichstag Fire Decree permitted the regime to arrest and incarcerate political opponents without specific charge, dissolve political organizations, and to suppress publications. It also gave the central government the authority to overrule state and local laws and overthrow state and local governments. The Nazi press described the Reichstag fire as the work of communists and a signal for their planned uprising. Although the communists had not in fact developed any plans for an uprising, the impact of propaganda and terror on existing fears of communist takeover convinced many Germans that Hitler's decisive action had saved the nation from Bolshevism. Predicting the Reichstag fire was Hanussen's most famous feat of clairvoyance. There are unsubstantiated claims that he may have been involved in the Reichstag fire, hypnotizing and directing a Dutch communist, Marinus von der Lippe, to commit the act. Another theory claims that it was a miscalculated use of inside information, as he might have got to know about the fire through his connections with the Nazis. Some historians believe, based on archive evidence, that the arson had been planned and ordered by the Nazis themselves as a false flag operation. The Reichstag fire not only paved the way for Nazi dictatorship, but also led to Hanussen's death shortly thereafter. A month later, on the 23rd of March, 1933, Erik Hanussen, then 43 years old, was arrested, probably by a group of SA men. On the 8th of April, the body of an unknown man was discovered in the woods south of Berlin. The corpse had been lying there for a long time and bore signs of abuse and traces of several bullets. Newspapers soon carried articles about the mysterious discovery of a body. It was only possible to identify him based on the tailor's monogram on an expensive suit, as the body had been eaten by animals. It was Hanussen's body, and it was discovered that he had died a painful death. Before he was shot 12 times, he had been brutally beaten. Who gave the initial command for the murder has never been discovered. However, even the highest-ranking Nazi officials, like Hermann Göring and Ernst, the leader of the SA, had turned to Hanussen for financial assistance, and papers recording amounts in excess of 150,000 marks owed to him somehow disappeared from his palace of occultism and were never found. While the palace closed and never reopened, the story of Erik Jan Hanussen continues to fascinate until this day. Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.